My God, and for people to think that that was okay, I mean, you see, not only was Jordan in a chokehold, but there were two other men. One was holding his arms, another one was milling about, touching on him as well. I mean, it's just, I mean, it definitely gives me Eric Gardner vibes. That also happened in New York where police officers choked him to death. And dozens of people witnessed this murder. It was on the subway. However, the murderer, a 24-year-old former US Marine, has not been arrested. And the tabloids, along with more respected news outlets, issue glowing praises of the 24-year-old Marine. These headlines right here. NYC subway rider who placed unhinged man in deadly chokehold release cops. New York Post is calling him unhinged, when in reality he struggled with mental health issues, was hungry, was thirsty, and was unhoused. I think that would mess with your mind too. And here's some of the background. Police are investigating the death of a man who was allegedly harassing subway riders in NoHo before one passenger took matters into his own hands. Officials say the altercation happened around 2:30 p.m. on the train at the Broadway Lafayette Street station. A 24-year-old passenger stepped in to subdue a 30-year-old man who was acting erratically towards fellow riders. It's not clear exactly how the confrontation unfolded, but it does not appear that any weapons were used. Now, the medical examiner has now, that was reported earlier, but as of Wednesday, the medical examiner has ruled Neely's death a homicide. Man involved in subway encounter killed by chokehold, death ruled homicide, medical examiner. Now, Jordan Neely, 30, died from a compression of the neck. You saw that in the video, it was very clear. The city's medical examiner determined on Wednesday the following: Neely is recognizable to some New Yorkers as a Michael Jackson impersonator who regularly danced in the Times Square transit hub. On Monday afternoon, he was yelling and pacing back and forth on an F train in Manhattan. Witnesses and police said when he was restrained by at least 3 people, including a US Marine veteran who pulled one arm tightly around his neck. Now, let's bring in Max on this. Max, it was very, very clear by that video that he was being choked. And the fact that people in that moment could not see that that was excessive, that the man's windpipe, like our windpipe is literally right here, is very troubling to me.
Yeah, I mean, this just shows you another step in the complete dehumanization, delegitimization of black bodies. I mean, you see people filming it like it's a movie. They're touching him like it's a circus attraction. This man is strangling a person to death with a chokehold that's barred in police departments. And what stuns me so much is that so many of the elected officials, the public leaders in New York who link arms with the left when times are good, are now disgustingly silent on this issue and have somehow lost the ability to say the word murder. I mean, we're chastising AOC for saying what everyone is aware of if you look at that video, that this was a murder, plain and simple.
Yeah, it was a murder, plain and simple. And I know that the mayor of that state wants to get into a back and forth with Representative Ocasio-Cortez instead of focusing on the main thing, which is a 30-year-old black man was, as you just said, murdered on the F train in his city, and people are acting like it was just another day. Because obviously when it comes to black bodies, and even before we actually started the show, Max, you and I were just talking about this, that some of the spirit or the essence of the zeitgeist of decades past or centuries past is still very much present in the 21st century, as much as it pains some people to admit it. Some people don't want to admit it because they don't believe that it ever was true that this country did anything wrong to anybody, let's known black people. That's the DeSantis camp. Then you got some people who want to believe that all is right because we're not in the 20th or 19th century. You have some people who don't understand it at all, who are just absolutely oblivious. And your point about elected officials who want to lock arms and be happy-go-lucky when times are good, but will not stand when there's some pressure to stand up. And the fact that the media kept reinforcing the fact that the guy that choked out Neely, that killed him, was a Marine. Yes, that is a way to describe him, but they use that description as a way to absolve him from what he did. And then what they put on Neely is that he was acting erratic. He was unhinged. You see how words create worlds. There was a saying when I was growing up, I probably dating myself here now, but I'm fabulous at any age. But sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Nothing could be further from the truth. The way we label things and categorize things, what we uplift and what we press down, it does absolutely matter. And the description that media is given to Neely compared to the man who murdered Neely is like night and day. But it is nothing new when it comes to how this country continues to try to describe and stereotype the Black community, especially Black men. Your thoughts?
You're totally right. And it's up to us to push back against those narratives. I mean, the New York Post was not the only outlet to describe Jordan Neely as unhinged, when in reality, the unhinged person is the Marine who just executed a stranger on a subway car in the middle of the day. I feel like I'm crazy here. Like the idea that the person who is the victim of an unprovoked attack is somehow to blame for their own death. These are the same people who could not stop talking about how violent New York City was. And now suddenly when it's a white Marine killing a Black man, none of those people have a thing to say about crime.
Not a thing to say at all, Max. And because Neely didn't fit the proper category, he wasn't affluent, he's poor. And not only is he poor, he's unhoused. He has some mental challenges. He's on that train saying, he's crying out, letting us know that he really is very much a reflection of America. He's not the only one, but yet now his life is not as worthy, and it's being shown time and time again. And I was hoping, in the Nation magazine, I want to encourage all the viewers to go and read this. Eli Mistal wrote a just searing article in the Nation magazine about this, and just the headline of it: one man killed Jordan Neely, but we all failed him. And I think Eli got that exactly right. Everything about Neely's death is a symptom of our collective rot, from the way we treat poverty as a crime to the way we treat soldiers as weapons that can be stowed. I mean, he hit that. He covered that whole thing. A man was choked to death on the F train in New York City this week. The victim, who appeared to be homeless, was allegedly being hostile and erratic on the subway, but he wasn't being violent. He said that he was hungry and thirsty and that he was prepared to die. Another man who reports have identified as a former Marine put him in a chokehold and killed him. The murder happened in broad view of the other passengers and was captured on video. The alleged assailant was briefly questioned by police, then released. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg says the investigation is ongoing, and on Wednesday, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner ruled the death a homicide, but no charges have been filed as of this writing. And then Eli goes on, Max, and says, now, if I don't tell you any other thing about this story, I bet you can guess who was Black and who was white. And that right there is a searing indictment on America. He goes further to say that no Black Marine would have been able to put a white homeless man in a chokehold and murder him in broad open daylight with witnesses and walk away. He further puts an emphasis on that by saying that not even former President Barack Obama would have been able to put a white homeless man in a chokehold, kill him in broad open daylight and walk away. A searing, Max, a searing indictment on 21st century America.
It really shows you exactly where we are, which is that the right is dispensing now with this myth. The stand your ground lie was always just a stepping stone to this. which is that you don't need a reason to kill a homeless person. Because as Donald Trump says, these people are infected, need to be handled, need to be moved into camps outside of cities. Republicans have been dehumanizing people for decades and are at the point now where they feel comfortable saying, yeah, this Marine did a good service by executing Jordan Neely. They say he was hospitalized or arrested 40 times for psychiatric issues, but that's a failing of our state, not Jordan Neely. The city had 40 attempts to get him care, and 40 times they did not. And this is what happened.
That's right, they failed them, and we fail. I mean the collective, we fail people like him every single day because of the way the system is set up. This is an example of a systemic failure. And because there was not an immediate arrest of the man responsible for Neely's death, some people are calling out the disparate treatment, and rightfully so. And the bias in the media reporting and the headlines, and even larger than that, our own biases as American people, because we've all been socialized in the same society, Max. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white or Asian or Hispanic or whatever, the swirl in between, unless we deconstruct our constructions on matters of race and ethnicity, we can carry those same biases and see some people as less deserving, less human. And that is exactly what happened to Jordan Neely. So for advocates working on the issue of poverty and police abuse, there was a simple reason Neely's killing happened the way it did. And why? In the aftermath, nothing seemed out of the ordinary when the killer was set free. Fear-mongering rhetoric about homelessness and crime from Democratic New York leaders, Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams. And let me rest right there for a minute, because Max mentioned the Republicans and their hypocrisy shining through per usual. Let's just go ahead and sprinkle a little of that Democratic hypocrisy on it, shall we? Because the leaders of the state of New York, a Democrat. The leaders of the New York City, a Democrat. And even they seem to believe that this was okay. They done drank the Kool-Aid on this as well.